Hello everybody, welcome to my channel. Today I'd like to talk about Linux Mint Cinnamon and the reasons why I like it and why I'm running it on my desktop. First of all, I'd like to get a misconception out of the way. Uh, some people say that Linux Mint is not a real Linux distribution, that, real geeks or tough guys have to use something like Arch or Fedora or I don't know whatever. But Linux Mint is for beginners, for noobs, for people who can't really do much with their systems. And this is not true. Linux Mint is a great distribution. You know, it's running on the Linux kernel, so it is Linux. And you can do anything with it just as with any other Linux distribution. And I think Linux Mint has of course, it has advantages and disadvantages, just as any other distribution. But for me, the advantages outweigh the disadvantages. Many people say that the disadvantage of Linux Mint is that you don't get the latest software. This is true. Linux Mint is based on the LTS, so the long-term support version of Ubuntu, but actually they have got their own repositories and everything. But I think the version of the software on, for example, on this installation, this is Linux Mint 18, maybe 1804 or 1803, I don't know, the latest 18. With the Cinnamon desktop, for me, the software is up to date enough. Of course, it works with PPA so that you can install the latest version of software which have PPAs. And also, what I really like about Linux Mint is where is the software manager. Tap, tap, tap. And here you have, for example, Flatpak by default. Of course, you can install and manage Flatpak applications in the command line. This is what I prefer because I just love the command line. And just have a look at this. I have installed OBS Studio, KeePass XC from Flatpak. Actually, FlatHub. FlatHub is the name of the repository that we are viewing right now. And just have a look at this. There are a lot of applications: Steam, VLC, even more Spotify, Visual Studio Code. Yeah, a lot of applications. Skype, although I don't use Skype anymore. But there are a lot of applications here. And the advantage of Flatpak is that uh, it is supposed to be always the latest version of the package, and also you don't have to worry about dependencies, because one Flatpak package, let me say that there are runtimes for Flatpak which, as far as I understand, which contain the dependencies. So you don't have to worry about anything. But I'm gonna talk maybe in a separate video about Flatpak. So whatever, you can get the latest software in most of the cases if you want. But let's talk about the real benefits of Linux Mint. I think the the greatest benefit of or advantage of Linux Mint is that it's very stable. By default, it's got all the applications I would ever need, all the tools and applications and everything. Uh, it is very similar to Windows, not only in looks but also in behavior, and the workflow is like in Windows, without the drawbacks of Windows. Because one thing I love about Linux that you never get a blue screen saying you have to wait because Windows is updating and it's 30% and 40, 50 and so on, and you have to wait and cannot use your computer because Windows is updating and you cannot do anything about it. With Linux, even if you install the updates, you never get delayed. You don't even have to restart after updates. So Linux is great. I'd never want to use Windows as my daily driver, only if I have to for some specific purposes. Okay, so much about Windows. You know, I'm coming from Windows, so I like this workflow. I like the start menu. I like the settings. This is also a huge advantage of Linux Mint that you get a lot of settings. It's not like GNOME, because in GNOME, if you just install vanilla GNOME or you install like Fedora workstation, which comes with GNOME or Ubuntu or whatever, you cannot do much with your system. You have to install the tweak tool, you have to install a browser extension in order to be able to install GNOME extensions. You know, it's just so laborious. I think it's a step back because I'm talking about basic settings now. So in GNOME you cannot access basic settings. You cannot customize very basic things. Even for basic settings you have to install tweak tool. It's the minimum. If you want to go further you have to install GNOME extensions from the browser, and I don't like it. I don't want to install extensions from the browser. I like to install extensions from the command line and update my extensions through the command line. That's what I like. I like the command line. It's the one of the greatest things about Linux. Okay, so Linux Mint is stable. Uh, it works great with my hardware. This is a Dell Latitude laptop. Dell Latitude E6430. And actually I used to run Fedora with GNOME on it. But after a live input update, my touchpad became just unusable because as soon as I put my finger on the touchpad, the mouse pointer started to shake violently. I didn't press the touchpad, I didn't move my finger. I just rested my finger on the touchpad and the mouse pointer moved really violently, so it was impossible to make fine subtle movements with the mouse. You know, if you cannot use the touchpad, really, you cannot use your whole laptop because it's a laptop. I'm not going to carry around a external mouse with me all the time. It's got a touchpad. I want to be able to use it. And you know, first I didn't really know if my hardware is bad or I don't know. So I installed also Windows on this laptop. Actually, it's right now in a dual boot setup with Windows, but I only use Windows for Steam for gaming because I don't have much time for gaming, but when I have some time for gaming, I like to play Half-Life or Black Mesa, and they just run much better on Windows. They are supposed to be supported on Linux, and you know they run, but actually Black Mesa, the one that you can buy uh, on Steam, I bought it and it's broken on Linux, so that's it. But whatever, for everything else I use Linux. Okay, where was I? I was talking about the touchpad. Yes, the touchpad. And for example, I also tried Kubuntu on this laptop and Antergos. I think also OpenSUSE, but nothing worked well. You know, my touchpad was just unusable. and I was able to install the how is this driver called? Synaptics or what? There is also a package manager called Synaptics, so I don't know. But there is a specific driver for these kinds of touchpads. You can also install this one in Fedora, for example. I did it. I'm talking about Fedora KDE right now. I did it, but for some reason it didn't really help. And if you got libinput, you know, libinput is the piece of software that handles your input devices like touchpad, mouse, keyboard, I guess. So where are my settings? Let's see. Where are the mouse and touchpad settings? Okay, touchpad. In every other distribution, these settings like sensitivity and so on are grayed out. I mean in KDE, GNOME you can forget it. You don't get anything like this in GNOME. It's not for people who want to customize or have to customize anything. I'm exaggerating, but you know what I mean. So here all of the touchpad settings are available. In KDE even more, but for me the most important setting is the sensitivity, because the reason why, for example, this touchpad works perfectly with Windows is that Windows installs the proper driver for this touchpad and it's not over sensitive. But in Fedora, Kubuntu, and Antergos, and any other Linux distribution, libinput is installed, and this touchpad just do not work with libinput anymore. And you know, sensitivity is on the lowest possible level, and only this way is my touchpad usable. I still can make it shake if I really wanted to. I could make it shake, but right now I can't. So you see, it's fantastic. Before that, if I just rested my finger on the touchpad, it would shake like this. Like this. It was unusable, very bad. So, huge plus for Mint, because Linux Mint supports my touchpad. My laptop is usable with Linux again, thanks to Linux Mint. What else do I like about Linux Mint? The window manager. Linux Mint has got the Muffin window manager, and I think this is the best window manager on the entire planet. I wish that every Linux distribution would include this window manager, because you know I use Windows tiling a lot, and Windows tiling is just so smart, so intelligent, so smooth in Linux Mint. It my pointer shaked again. Okay, but it happens so rarely that it's it's not even disturbing anymore. Okay, for example, let's see the file manager. Just look at this. I can tile it to the sides, to the edges or corners, up and down. I can go in circles like this. It's even better than Windows. Just have a look at this. It is so nice. It is so fantastic. So if I want to do this, I can arrange 4 windows like this, and this is just so cool. If if you have to copy and paste stuff from here to there and so on, and you have to look at something while you are copying, or I don't know, it's just so useful to be able to do that. All right. The other thing I like is the Linux, no, not Linux, the Mint Y Dark theme. Let's have a look at it. Themes, Mint Y Dark. It is so beautiful. This dark theming with these green color accents is just beautiful. I like it a lot. Beautiful. I like dark themes. In KDE, my favorite theme is the Breeze Dark theme. It's even better than this one, and I'll show you why. Let's open good old Firefox. Good old Firefox. Let's search for something. Linux Mint. And just have a look at this. This search text box has a dark background and dark text. Just look at it. I cannot see what I have typed into this text box, and if I'm typing something, I have no idea what am I typing. This is bad. This makes this search function unusable. It is practically unusable. You have to type something and have to highlight, and then you see what you have typed. But how do you modify it? You have to go back, and here it is very bad. I know there is a workaround. You can create some CSS file or some kind of file in your home directory, and then it should work again. But I don't like these workarounds because something like this should work properly out of the box. Just as with Chromium. Wait a minute, I don't want to open Chromium because it opens my emails, and I don't want to show my emails, my private emails, to the whole internet. So you have to believe me or try it. With Chromium it doesn't happen. Even if you use a dark theme in GTK, I mean even if you use a GTK dark theme, for example the text boxes work properly. I mean you don't have such a problem that you have a dark text box with dark text in it. So Chromium managed to do it properly. I really expect Firefox to also do it properly. And I don't want to mess around with workarounds when something like this should work out of the box. But whatever, it's not that bad, I can still use Firefox. It's just annoying. What else? So this is my problem with not only with Linux Mint but with GNOME-based desktops in general, and with the GTK dark theme. But actually, I think it's the problem with Firefox because, as I have explained, Chromium doesn't have this problem. So really, Firefox has to solve this problem. What else? What else? What else do I like about Linux Mint? Linux Mint just works. For example, Switch to Linux and Easy Linux, Joe Collins. They both use Linux Mint Cinnamon as their daily driver. They use it for production work, and I can understand why. I'm using Linux Mint on my laptop and I'm very, very happy with it. The only reason I don't run Linux Mint on my desktop PC is because I like KDE so much. I cannot say that I like it more than Linux Mint Cinnamon anymore because it's just so great how it works. But KDE is, especially the Breeze Dark theme and the whole ecosystem of KDE, I mean the KDE apps, they are just so great. I like them a lot. I like Linux Mint also a lot, but on my main PC, I mean on my desktop PC, I'm gonna stick with KDE and specifically Fedora KDE. But my other favorite distribution that comes with KDE is Kubuntu. Kubuntu also looks beautiful, it works beautifully. There are a lot of keyboard shortcuts that are, for example, that are not defined in the KDE spin of Fedora. For example, if you install the KDE spin of Fedora, you don't get any window typing shortcuts. You have to set those shortcuts for yourself. And the thing I like about Kubuntu that such window tiling shortcuts are already in place. And with Linux Mint, this is no question. It just works better than anything else on planet Earth. Alright. I like these sound effects. I can imagine they are too loud, maybe for the video, but whatever, I cannot do much about it. Okay. And yeah, some people complain about this update system of Linux Mint, that it does not always update everything. As far as I know, it's been fixed, or it's gonna be fixed in Linux Mint 19. And one bad thing about Linux Mint 19 that Linux Mint has decided to drop the KDE version as of Linux Mint 19, and I think it's a bad decision because if Linux Mint still kept supporting KDE, I mean with an official KDE version, I think I would use Linux Mint KDE and not Cinnamon. And anyways, I always make the updates or do the updates in the command line. Let's just see if there are any updates. The thing I like about Fedora is DNF. So you only have to type sudo DNF update and you can update your system. You don't have to type sudo apt-get update, then apt-get dist upgrade. I like when things are simple and when one tool can do more things with less typing or less whatever. Alright. What else? I don't really know. Linux Mint is great. What else can I say about it? It's just great. Linux Mint is beautiful, especially with this dark theme. Linux Mint is stable. It works great with my hardware. Yes. About hardware. I've got a Samsung multifunctional printer. And Linux Mint is just so smart, it's so beautiful. As soon as I plug in my printer, it just installs the drivers, and in 20 seconds I can use my printer and my scanner. I don't even have to install the official Samsung Unified Linux driver or Unifying Linux driver or however it is called. I just plug in my printer and Linux Mint does everything for me. That's so great about it. For example, on Fedora, my printer and scanner only works if I install the official Samsung Unifying Linux driver. And there is no problem with it. This is what I like about Fedora, that it works with my hardware also. But for example, in Arch, I mean Antergos, I couldn't make my scanner work. I used to run Antergos on my desktop PC, and for a period of time my scanner worked, but one day it stopped working, and I couldn't repair it. And I tried installing the Samsung driver, and it didn't work, so I have to give up. I had to give up on Antergos because I like Antergos that it's a rolling distribution. I like to have the newest software possible. For example, the thing I like about KDE is that you get the latest kernel all the time. I don't need the latest kernel all the time, but I like to have it. I'm just like that. But usability and stability is more important for me because, you know, I've got the hardware I've got. I have to be able to use my hardware. I have to be able to use my touchpad. I have to be able to use my scanner, my printer, and I have to use a Linux distribution that works with my hardware. It doesn't matter how much I like Antergos. If it doesn't work with my scanner or with my touchpad, I can't use it. And that's what I like about Linux, that you have a lot of choice. There are a lot of distributions, a lot of desktop environments, a lot of window managers, a lot of everything, and everybody can find the right combination. So that's just so great. So I want to emphasize again, Linux Mint is not only for beginners. Linux Mint is, I think, the most beginner-friendly distribution. So for new people, I recommend Linux Mint. No doubt. Linux Mint is, I think, the best distribution for new people, for beginners. But you know, it's not a beginner's distribution. It is a ordinary Linux distribution that is running the Linux kernel. It's great, it's beautiful. You can use it just like you can use any other distribution. And I like Linux Mint. Huge thumbs up to Linux Mint. The Linux Mint developers really put together a great distribution. I think one of the greatest distribution among all of the Linux distributions, because you know it's not Linux Mint is not specialized for something. For example, people say that Fedora is for developers because it's not so stable, and this is not true. I've been using Fedora for quite a long period of time, and Fedora is stable. I have never had any problem with the stability of Fedora. I'm currently running Fedora 28 on my desktop PC. Before that I ran Fedora 27. I never had a problem. Antergos is also pretty stable because it's really truly a rolling distribution. It can have you can run into problems more often than, for example, with Fedora, but I have never run into any problem with Fedora. Yeah, other than the problem with my touchpad, but it's not only about Fedora, but it's about every distribution other than Linux Mint. Yeah, I wanted to say that, for example, Joe Collins and Switch to Linux prefer Linux Mint because the their computer is a tool for them to get work done. And for this, Linux Mint is perfect. You know, if you a person, if you are a geek who wants to mess around with the system and who wants to have the latest version of everything as soon as it comes out, certainly Linux Mint is not for you. Nobody has to use any specific distribution. Everybody has the freedom and the choice to choose the distribution, the desktop environment, and whatever combination that works for him or her. But this is really true for Linux Mint, that if you are using Linux Mint, you don't have to worry about a lot of stuff. Your system does not get in your way. You can just do your work, you can get work done on your system. That's a huge plus. And really, I am very much inclined to use Linux Mint as my only daily driver on every of my computers, on all of my computers, but I really like KDE so much that I cannot decide. I've got KDE installed, I mean Fedora KDE installed on my desktop PC. It's gonna stay there because I like it so much. I've got Linux Mint installed on this laptop now, and it's gonna stay because I like it so much. Yeah, I think that's it for today. Come on. Oh, there it is. So, goodbye.